All right, let's continue with our eNCA special focus this morning, talking about the blackouts and what's happening with our country, the economy, and why we can't get sustainable power. Eskom plagued with power stations breaking down on a regular basis, contributing to the ongoing power cuts. Then the power comes back on and it trips again because of a lack of maintenance. There's already been 25 days of rolling blackouts this year, and I'm afraid it's only going to get worse. How much worse? Independent energy analyst Mike Rossouw joining us this morning. Hello to you, Mike. Good to have you on eNCA. Sorry about the connectivity issue a little earlier. I think we got you now. Tell us, before we talk about how bad it's going to get, what do you make of this regular blackout sessions we're having every night between 5 and 10? Do you think it's helping the country, or is it worse?
It's actually putting businesses out. I mean, I drive around the shops and it's just terrible to see them closing down. I mean, the spa down the road closed down just recently, and so it continues. So the economy is being destroyed. There's no doubt in my mind. I predicted and told this was going to happen a while back, and I also explained what they're doing wrong. But they seem to persist and on the path that they're at, which just means load shedding is going to get worse.
And so when we now talk about worse, I always want to try and see how much worse it's going to get. Is it even possible to predict, or are we seeing a doomsday scenario in our future?
Well, the way Eskom are keeping at least some of the power flowing is by load shedding. So they are in a situation where they cannot even predict what's going to happen a few hours ahead. The plants are breaking down that frequently and so unexpectedly because they're not in control of the situation. So they're just basically going from one breakdown to the other and continue to do so. And again, they don't have sufficient resources, and the ones that they've got, they are not being utilized properly. So as long as they keep doing that, the situation is going to get worse. I don't think that there'll ever be a blackout as such, because they're just going to increase load shedding. That's it.
Could we get to stage 8 this year, Mike?
Very possible, yeah.
What does stage 8 look like for us?
Look, I think at the moment there's a better than 50% chance that we're going to go above level 3 and 4, and so on. As I said, this is because they're not in control of the situation. So there's a good chance that we'll see higher levels of load shedding. To what extent is hard to predict, because they don't even know what they're going to have tomorrow or the next day or whatever. So all they're doing is reacting to that and load shedding, load shedding, load shedding. So it continues.
I want to talk about the management at Eskom in a moment, Mike. I'll get to that in a second. I'm sure you're aware of the calls for management to be fired, management to change, they're inefficient, all that. We'll get there in just a moment. I always like to ask energy experts this question, though. Tums and I were talking about it earlier. If we were to give Eskom all the money in the world, give them the entire fiscus to fix whatever they needed to, a blank check, if you will, how quickly, in your opinion, could Eskom get on top of this problem? Are we talking a year, a couple of years, a decade?
Well, firstly, money in itself is not the big problem. The problem is the use of resources that they have. Yes, money is difficult, but the job at hand right now, and to recover, which is going to take at least, I'd say, 5 years if they do everything right. But the money in itself is not going to help. Though you can throw all the money you like in the world, it's just going to go down the drain. That way all the time with what they're doing. They're doing the wrong things.
And how do we fix this? How do we start doing the right things? Does Andre de Ruyter know what he's doing?
Look, Andre and the COO are good men. I don't think that there's any sense in firing them. But the point is they've got to basically sit back and listen to what the real problem is, because they're just doing the same thing over and over again. I think Einstein said if you do the same thing over and over, expect a different result, it's madness. And this is madness. So they're just they're not getting the information. They actually don't know what's going on. So that's unfortunately the situation.
And let's imagine for a moment, Mike, you were invited to Megawatt Park this morning. Off the back of our interview, Andre de Ruyter sits you down and goes, "Okay, Mike, I watched you and Gareth chat this morning. You say I'm getting it wrong. What should I do?" What do you tell him?
Very simple. I'll say, look, Andre, that I've done my homework, and I do know that you don't have sufficient manpower, and you spread it too thin. So to stop wasting all these resources at the small power stations and redirect them to the larger stations where they can get much more megawatts for the same effort. And then in terms of the old power stations, not a single person or anybody needs to lose their job. We need those people, and they just need to be redirected to the big power stations and then focus their attention on getting availability right.
Let me ask you a question that I'm sure you've been asked many times over the years when people run into you, Mike, on the street. Is there any difference in your mind that could be made if the experts that we lost due to immigration and people leaving those mass retrenchment at Eskom years ago, if all of them were to come back, the skill set is where I'm going with this, could we get on top of this problem a bit quicker?
I believe we can, yes.
And what do you think it could take to bring those engineers back into the fold? Many of them have gone private, and sadly many of them have left the country because of the way they were treated. How would you tell Andre de Ruyter and Eskom to try and get them back in? What's the incentive? Money?
Well, money is always a helpful thing, but I think the thing is they would need to be contacted individually and explained exactly what's going on and why we require them, so that they understand where they stand. I don't think that's going to be easy, and I don't think, or many of them will not come back because they've made a decision to move on with their life. But there are some, I'm sure, that will consider such an offer. But then they will want to know that they are going to be properly led and that they can apply their knowledge and skills to do the right thing, which I'm sure they can.
And as always, Mike, I really appreciate your time in joining us this morning. Our eNCA focus on Eskom and blackouts. Mike Rossouw, independent energy expert, joining us, taking some time to give us his thoughts this morning here on eNCA.